The Box Seat, brought to you by our stable of sponsors. Hi everyone, welcome to this edition of your Box Seat. Yes, brought to you by our stable of sponsors. Michael Guerin off the back of a terrific night of harness racing from Alexandra Park last Friday night. We crowned another Auckland Cup, Rowe Cup and Northern Derby winners.
Yeah, hi Greg. Big hi to everybody watching around the country as we approach winter, and to all of our friends who watch us in Australia. We appreciate all your viewership during the season, and we hope we can do the same for you next season as well. Yeah, at a good Auckland Cup night, Greg, way better than I was expecting 6 weeks ago. Once I heard that the BD Joes and Better Eclipses weren't going to be there, I really worried about the Auckland Cup. I thought it could be 6 horses. As it was, it turned out to be a really good race. There was pressure, there were some different storylines. Ultimately, a very good horse won, and a lot of news out of the back of the Auckland Cup. We'll get into that today on the show, Greg, but I thought the night couldn't really have gone any better considering the time of year, some of the horses who simply couldn't be there, and the potential that a couple of the races could have been pedestrian. None of them were.
No, exactly. So let's get into what's on your show, the Box Seat, the final show for this series. We'll review the Auckland Cup meeting. We get an update from Jamie McKinnon on where the ATC is at. We wrap up the New Zealand bloodstock weanling sales from last week. We'll have a look at Ashburton on Sunday. Yes, feature race day for them. 3 big races on the card. We'll have a look at the Elite Lop, and Michael Guerin will take us through that. And hand milking, we give our final total in terms of our donation to the Breast Cancer Foundation. All right, let's get straight into it and go to the Trillion Trust Auckland Cup, the 134th running of this very good race. Here's the start. Self Assured gets away nicely. Akuta to his inside. Can go with a bit of a skip there at the start, but a brilliant piece of driving, Michael, here by David Butcher. He manages to get to the outside of Self Assured, which means Natalie Rasmussen can't get in front of him. And as you wrote in the New Zealand Herald, that meant that he would dictate the race from the front. Here's the move from Natalie, though.
Yeah, and very, very rarely does a horse do this in any major race, but particularly over 2 miles, Greg, and lose this battle. Now, she has a dig there, clearly David indicating the front's not there, the batter's up, as you can see. She eases, then has another little dig here where she speeds up again and has to pull back, ends up 3 back the inside, then ends up in the 1-1. But once you've done that over 2 miles, you never a factor in the end. He has gone absolutely super. Can go in front, copy that outside, and we'll talk about them later. Self Assured, brave, but Akuta, who a week before the race wasn't going to be there, Greg, just powers over the top.
The old boy, they go to battle in the Cup, but Akuta for the Auckland Cup, second over Self Assured, and third, maybe Smithy's Terror in front of copy that.
Never gets old winning an Auckland Cup.
No, and for what he's been through, it was a great thrill, Greg, to sort of overcome the setback that he had and perform the way he did tonight. It's a real credit to him.
With all the great wins you've had, the challenges you've had with him in the last week or two must make it even more satisfying.
Oh, definitely, yeah. You really nothing but admiration for the horse to overcome it and come out on top tonight. I thought he'd probably need a nice trip to run in 3, but to win it was just amazing.
In the run, with all the pressure that was on up front, your other horse, Self Assured, was part of that. In many ways, that's probably what won you the race.
Yeah, just that middle stage work, and it took a bit of the kick out of a couple of the others. I wasn't sure about Copy That, whether he'd got away safely or not. So when he came round, I knew that the pace would be on from then on. But I'd sat there and just done no work through the running, so it was probably the winning of the race doing it.
Is that enough for him? Has he done enough in this campaign?
Yes, he has, Greg, yeah, and he's had a bit of treatment and what have you to get him here tonight, so he's earned a well-earned break.
Yeah, and a big thrill as well for Ian Dobson, and he's had a few horses with you now, but he probably hasn't had one as good as this.
No, that's right, no. And it's wonderful to see Ian here tonight and enjoy the moment. So He's getting on Ian now, but still he gets a lot of satisfaction and enjoyment out of his horses.
Congratulations, mate.
Thanks, Greg.
That might rank up there as career best performance.
Oh, most definitely, Greg. Look, he stepped clean and good, but just couldn't muster up the momentum. They'd backed off the tempo enough. I had to come out and have a bit of a look. I just thought his run was super. You know, I couldn't have been more proud of him. He tried hard. He won a great race.
Terrific performance.
You're thrilled with him, Greg. He's an honest horse. And the key to it tonight was the pace went on early in the middle stages, helped him a lot because he loves that sort of when the others get a fracture tide, he'll carry on. Lacks a yard of speed, but it was a great run.
Yeah, look, he's had a great campaign, Methven obviously, and now placing in an Auckland Cup. So there's still plenty to look forward to because he's stepped up to this grade when you consider where he was last winter.
Oh, absolutely. Last winter he was a C1, C2 horse, or 2-1, you know, under 50 rating. But, you know, like his cup run was great because he missed away. And I always said to owners, like, it takes, when you're not a real top horse, it takes 6 months to cut your teeth in this grade, and he's done it. So we're wrapped.
Ray, it was a tricky build-up towards the Cup this year. How happy were you with him, with the performance he put in tonight?
I thought it was pretty good because he hasn't raced for a month. I couldn't even trial him. And, you know, there's training is one thing and trialling and racing's another thing. So it just told on him that last little bit. And, yeah, it's a case, hurrah, hurrah. We'll move on.
Speaking of moving on, the idea was always to go to Brisbane. It's still in the plan? So a brilliant performance by Akuta. He now has an Auckland Cup to go with all of his other big race wins. But Michael, post those comments, particularly from Ray Green, you've got an update on Copy That's Queensland campaign.
Yes, I had to talk to Ray on Tuesday night and he said, as I sort of thought, Greg, all weekend, he said, we're lukewarm on Queensland. The horse has been up for a long time. He's the only standard bred who's crossed the Tasman twice for 2 different campaigns into Australia and come back since the season started, because I know the season starts January 1, but for these horses it actually starts in September. So they race September through to May. If he races on now, well, he doesn't really get much of a break before the New Zealand Cup. We all know he's won 2. Greg, he wins 3. He joins only 3 other horses, Indianapolis, Falstep and Terra to Love, to win 3 New Zealand Cups. That's their goal. So he hasn't completely ruled it out, but you know when you talk to trainers, when you've done it long enough, Greg, he won't be going. Copy That won't be going there. Either will Self Assured or Akuta. That's great news for the IRT New Zealand Cup. We have the big 3 guns who we love, and you can swap them around because there's no guarantees Akuta will beat them again. Self Assured was the run of the race there, and Copy That we know is an Addington 2-mile specialist. So they're in play with a newcomer, like anything goes, Krug. Obviously, Old Town Road's just misfiring a touch. I think he'll be a better horse. His second full season in the open grade. The Beatty Joes, the Ultra Wise guys, some of the other horses who race in the south who didn't come north for the Cup, maybe hopefully a better Eclipse type horse, Greg. So once you put those together, we have a really good New Zealand Cup, and the idea of those 3 massive guns going there together with that singular goal, I think is really cool, and I think it causes enough anticipation in punters that the storyline of 3 New Zealand Cups potentially for Copy That, plus Self Assured trying to win another one, and is Akuta going to usurp the older boys? That's something we can play with during the spring. Akuta's a funny horse, Greg, because if you asked most people in Australasia who's the best 4-year-old, if they lived in Queensland, they'd say Leap to Fame. If they lived in Victoria, they'd say Catch a Wave or Captain Ravishing. And yet, ironically, his big race record is at least as good or better than any of them. Catch a Wave's won a Miracle Mile, but you can make a case that a Taylor Mile plus an Auckland Cup at least equals that. Then you start saying, well, Catch a Wave's won a Chariots of Fire, which is really good, but hey, Akuta's also beaten open class horses last September when he was 3. So, really interesting, Greg. He's a horse who, bizarrely for what he's done in his career, isn't seen as a champion or a superstar. He's a horse who I think people are still warming to. I think we'll do a lot of warming, Gregory, in the next 2 years.
Yeah, brilliant training performance from Mark and, of course, Nathan Purden continuing the All-Stars' incredible run in the race, and, of course, Mark's 7th win in it too. Looking at the market for the IRT New Zealand Cup, so Akuta's gone favourite. He's $3, $4.50 for Self-Assured, and copy that, and out to $5 for Old Town Road. But there's still plenty to happen as we build towards the second Tuesday in November. That was the first of the 3 big Group 1s out of Alexandra Park. Let's go to the Reharvest Rowe Cup and the start, the all-important start, Michael, and unfortunately for the favourite and the hopes, Muscle Mountain put on a display that he's actually done on more than one occasion at a big race level.
Well, and the punters, Greg. I think every multi-bet of the night ran past him. Yes, he was enormous in defeat. He launched mid-race. I've got no issues with how Ben drove the horse. He was the best horse in the race, and sitting back in a full field and trying to out-sprint them wasn't going to work. Enough about him. The winner, Love in the Port. Here's a horse that Phil Williamson's had to be patient with. Here's a horse that Maddie Williamson's had to drive right at the right time. Was he the best horse in the race? Maybe not. Barrier 1 enormously helped, as it always does, being on the marker pegs over 2 miles, as Akuta was on the marker pegs in the Auckland Cup after this. But as much as a big dividend means that 96% of people who bet on this race, Greg, lost money, I don't think there was one person who enjoys harness racing who was disappointed by this. The Williamsons are a much loved and respected family. Matty Williamson is a champion guy. He's the first one of the clan to drive a Rowe Cup winner, and for all the things he's overcome, Love in a Port, including pacing during a New Zealand trotting derby, he deserved this. Oscar Bonavina was good. Hard to make excuses for many back in the field, Greg. And Muscle Mountain, well, he'll get his 2 mile race one day. You've got to start wondering whether the hopes will even think about pitting him on the unruly, because he can afford to give 10 metres away. As we're seeing here, he can't afford to give 80. Here's Love in the Port for Maddie and Phil and the family, taking the Rowe Cup.
Love in the Port for the Rowe Cup. Love in the Port to beat Oscar Bonavina. Eurocash third, Muscle Mountain. Huge run just to finish 4th.
That's pretty cool to win one of our greatest trotting races.
Yeah, definitely. No, huge thrill, and just wrapped for the horse and the connections.
What about last week? Things just didn't pan out for you. The standing start issues at the start were his biggest problem.
Yeah, he let out the first go, and he was about 3rd or 4th out the second go, and then obviously he muffed it the last go, and meant he had to do a lot of work. He's the only horse in the race that did work, and he still wasn't that far away, so I thought there'd be a rapid fire start tonight, and sure enough it was that way. And, you know, made a great beginning, and then, you know, he showed his true worth.
Yeah. He's always looked a really good stayer, and that was the way to drive him tonight.
Yeah, definitely. I lost no confidence last week. I thought, you know, the only horse I was thinking prior to the race was to follow Muscle Mountain. I thought we've showed to be as good as any of the rest, and with things going our way. So, you know, tonight he showed that he is a horse that is up to that level.
Matty, they're bloody hard to win these Group 1s, especially a Rowe Cup and Dominions. And to do it with your dad, I mean, I know this will mean a lot.
Yeah, well, I think I've had 5 drives in it and placed every time. So it's one of those ones I've been knocking on the door, had a lot of seconds and thirds in it, and just a great race. And yeah, huge for Dad. You know, he's not doing as many horses at the moment, and still to have horses at this level and race as well as he has. And that horse has been, you know, a headache for him a lot of the way. But credit to Dad and the owners that they've pulled pin at times where a lot wouldn't have. And, you know, they've reaped the rewards in the long run.
Congratulations, mate.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, second win in the race for his father, Phil Williamson, won it in 2007 with 1 over Kenny. And I spoke, Michael, to Phil yesterday. A dozen Group 1s he's had now. And I said, gee, it's been a wee while though since Springback Richard and the Dominion back in 09. He said, have a think about the horses that my horses have had to be racing against. The I Can Do's, it's the Stents, the Mombays. You know, it's been an incredible, and now Muscle Mountain, Bolt for Brilliant, Sunday Sun. He says, very difficult to get one to be able to beat them, but he was absolutely over the moon for the connections, Keith Usher and also Sylvia White. Well done to them. They've been patient too. And yeah, Matty was, he was really stoked about winning the Rowe Cup.
Yeah, and it's rare that our major 2 mile races, New Zealand Cup, Auckland Cup, or Dominion and Rowe Cup, are won by inferior horses. You know, usually they're won by Sunday Sun or I Can Do's It, or the pacing races are won by the superstars. It's incredibly rare that other horses sneak under the guard, and I'm happy to see it. People, if you don't have these moments, Gregory, then people stop coming. That's one of the problems we face in harness racing, is a lot of people, particularly at Alexandra Park, don't want to go because I can't beat Muscle Mountain, I can't beat Sunday Sun, and all that sort of nonsense. They should watch this replay. Watch it in 3 years and 5 years and 10 years' time. You know, you can win these races if you turn up. You can't if you don't.
No, dead right. And that was win number 8, 220-odd thousand in the bin. As we found out on Trot's Talk, Michael, young family that Matthew has, 3 children, so he needs to be earning some decent money for he and Charlotte to fund the family. But yeah, great result for them, and yeah, magic to see the Williamsons back on top there. Just out of the race, Double Delight unfortunately has broken a pedal bone. Spoke to Tony Hulahi yesterday. She will be boxed for, well, maybe Michael 5 to 6 months, and yeah, it'd be hard to imagine to think that she'll be coming back at the top level. However, it's happened before, but you never like to hear or see that in a race like that.
No, you don't. The great thing for her is she won a harness jewels as a 2-year-old, and that's more important than almost anything she could do at open class. She's been really good this autumn, really brave. But in 2 or 3 years' time, when you're at the sales and you look at the catalogue, and you see harness jewels winning 2-year-old, plus some really good form afterwards, including in Northern Oaks, she's worth a fortune, Greg. I think, as much as you don't want to see an injury, I think the more of our good trotting mares and pacing mares we start retiring at 3 or 4, or at the worst 5, the better for the industry. Take the injury away, she'll make a lovely brood mare because she had guts and speed, Greg. So, yep, I think those days are coming where we're going to see a lot more of our mares not racing to 6, 7 and 8, Greg. And to be honest, I think it's a good thing for the industry.
Yep, $1.80 a Muscle Mountain's price now for the Renwick Farms Dominion. Then you go out to Bulk for Brilliance $4.20. Just Believes in the market at $5.50. We'll talk about him a little bit later on. And Lovin' the Port and $11 Chance. Tony did say to me that she's still in good health, Double Delight, and yep, she will be absolutely fine. Let's move on to the Brecon Farms at Northern Derby, the 49th running of this very good race. Love Me 2 had dominated from the top end. There's the favourite, Confessional, having a gallop, a really good run by Walking on Sunshine after winning the Oaks in second position again. But it was Love Me 2 in the Brecon Farms, appropriately given this one by What the Hill out of Love Your Doozy, a race that not only the connections of the winner enjoyed, but the breeders as well.
Derby winner for 2023, a superb win, second over Walking on Sunshine. She nearly made it the Oaks Derby double. She'll come up one short.
Congratulations, mate.
No, that was awesome, thank you.
Yeah. Look, going into tonight, I know Blair was very happy with him last week and you had to go wide on the track. Tonight when he was on the markers, he just looked superior.
Yeah, well, that was sort of, I wasn't happy with how he trotted last week, but I hoped that it was just, being caught wide on the bends. And I did say that to Blair before he went out, that was my probably one concern with him. So when he drew one tonight, take luck out of the equation, don't die wondering, because he can have a break after tonight. It didn't matter if he had a tough one. So I certainly think being on the fence helped, but I do think that he was probably 110% in the Harness Millions and maybe 109 tonight, but that didn't really matter.
No, it didn't, and I know that was your target race originally, but to pull off a Derby and Group 1 success means a lot, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely. As I say, it was awesome, the Harness Millions, because that's the race we'd set him for. So to win the Derby's a bit bittersweet, really, because until we won the Harness Millions, we probably didn't think we were a live winning chance of it. But I've said it numerous times: the constitution of that horse is unbelievable, and when you have a horse like that, it gives you a lot of confidence that when the chips are down, he's going to have your back.
And there's a fair bit ahead for him too, because he's proven now at least twice how good a stayer he is.
Yeah, well, as I say, his constitution's unreal. He doesn't know how to get tired. He just keeps running. I don't know if it's half silly or what, but he just wants to be a racehorse. And probably in the last 6 weeks, or 6 weeks leading up to the Harness Millions, he really grew 1, 2 or 3 legs, and I do think he probably peaked in that race too. And we've said all along, the springtime's going to be when he comes into his own, and as I say, to see him, set up 30 quarters in front and he looked like he could have just done another round at that speed. He's just happy as Larry being out there early. So, as I say, very exciting for the future, knowing that he's got that hopefully he's got that improvement in him.
Group 1 winning trainer Dylan Ferguson. How does that sound?
Yeah, I can die a happy man now. So it's something our whole stable, we want to have horses in the big races, and we've had good success in being competitive in the feature races. Obviously, him winning a listed race, and the fillies have been competitive behind Millwood Nike. So I was glad she wasn't turning up as a trotter tonight. But yeah, as I say, it was just nice to not take the monkey off our back, so to speak. We've had a couple of placings, and we've got the nice horses in the barn, so hopefully it's onwards and upwards.
It's a pretty big thrill.
Yeah, bloody good, mate, thanks. Great for Dylan getting his first Group 1. Just a shame he couldn't be sitting in the cart, mate. But no, the horse went very, very well.
Last week you were wide on the track, and he gave you a few problems steering-wise, but in on the markers, and you had the confidence to get him back in front, and he dominated from there.
Yeah, so true, Greg. Just being on the markers was the key thing, with his hanging on the bends and getting a bit awkward. But, Dylan was, he wanted him driven positively, so that's what we done, and yeah, and perfect.
Congratulations.
Cheers, mate.
Yeah, great performance by this horse, Michael, who, there's a lot to look forward to. The Derby at the end of the year is going to be clearly his next big target.
Yeah, well, firstly, going back to Graham Rogerson, who's Dylan's senior partner, and enables him to do what he does. Congratulations winning that Derby and the New Zealand Galloping Derby, which is an incredible double. For Dylan, I think this is the horse that's going to put him on the map. You would think, being a trotter, this horse might race for 5 seasons at the top level, because he's pretty good. And that's what Dylan deserves. He's a very talented young horseman, and he thinks very deeply about what he's doing. So thrilled for him. All 3 races we're just showing you, all 3, winner came from the marker pegs. Yes, Akuta came from 3 back on the outside eventually, but he was on the marker pegs for the first half of the race. Loving the Port on the marker pegs, Red, and Love Me Too on the marker pegs. And the second horse on the marker pegs. It's the place to be in those major races. 2 miles or 2,700 metres with a lead up from the mobile. Feels like 3,000 metres. Nice little timely reminder. Anytime you go to back a horse who's not going to be in the marker pegs in a distance race, particularly at Alexander Park, have a think about it.
Yep, absolutely. Let's go to another couple of the features out of the park. This was the Mares race, and Whispering Artist, she's really stood up, Michael. This was the Pal Transport 44th North Island Breeders. Manhattan was excellent in second, once again having to work very hard, but she's come a wee way, Whispering Artist, and I think there's a lot to look forward to for her and whatever she lines up in.
I think she's the most improved horse in the country. She's gone from 1-win Cambridge type horse, and Cambridge and Alexandra Park form tends to be vastly different, to beating Group 1 capable mares. And Greg, you would suggest she's going to be a Group 1 horse. You would suggest she has her chances in races like the Queen of Hearts. Unfortunately, of course, there's going to be a horse like Millwood Nike in front of her. Here's another horse, Greg, who could be in that open class racing coming up in the spring, and I think he'll have furnished from what he did earlier this campaign. Chimichurri getting home in a good field, lovely drive by Alicia Harris and Greg, and he'll add to that open class bunch of horses. Whether he's a true New Zealand Cup horse, I'm not sure, but he's got the speed to be a factor in plenty of other races.
All right, that was win number 9 for Chimichurri, and of course Alicia Harrison getting the job done there for the Stonewall team. All right, quick summary, Michael, of the Auckland Cup meeting the last couple of weeks. What will you take away from it?
I think it worked out as well as it possibly could have, and I think a lot of people worked really hard to make it work out well. I'm not sure there's many horses, if we transfer it, because there's only 2 other places you can put it, Greg. One's in March and one's on New Year's Eve. And I don't really have an opinion on where it should be. I'll turn it regardless. But I think if it had gone to either of those dates, outside Krug and maybe BD Joe, I'm not sure we would have got much of a better field.
Yep.
So, and the trot race was a capacity field. The 3-year-old trot is largely irrelevant because they'll turn up when you put the race on. So I'm not sure it sits in the right place, but I don't know where it should sit. And the crowd was good, the promotion was okay, and at least it had relatively clear air because there's nothing major going on in the gallops at the moment. I'll be interested to see where it does end up, and I'm pretty sure it'll be here next year. And if it is, let's give it one more crack. And if we have a good result, so be it. The one thing I would say about the time of year is it's really easy to go, it's too late. Then again, usually this weekend we're looking forward to the Jewels.
Yep.
And it never felt too late. So, I don't know, Greg. I'm going to turn up and enjoy it regardless. I enjoyed the last 2 weeks.
Yep, absolutely, and I did too, and that wraps up another carnival. Congratulations to the ATC, and we're going to hear very shortly from their boss, their president, Jamie McKinnon, about where things are at there. Sad to hear the passing recently of Maurice O'Leary. He was a very good horseman, trained about 60-odd winners, 65 winners. Cornell had the first race on Cup Day, I remember a few years ago, with Jenny's Rocket and Jenny's Comet, but just an all-round good bloke. He was on the Canterbury Park Trotting Club, and yeah, our thoughts with Maurice's extended family. They laid him to rest just over a week or so ago. All right, short break for us. On the other side, we'll catch up with Jamie McKinnon and find out what's happening at the ATC. Jamie, you've had some challenges since you became chairman.
Greg, there wasn't a long queue for the job. I was at the front, I looked behind, there was no one there.
Part of that was around the debt situation. So let's clarify where the ATC are at now as opposed to where they've come from.
Yes, well when I arrived, we were in the process of selling the Glen Eagles block of land, which is between the club's grandstands and the apartment block that we'd finished. That settled for 51.6 mil. And then also, the first year of my presidency, we managed to get a sale on the Pukekohe training complex. And when that settles, hopefully not too far away, we'll be left with about 25 million, 30 million with cash in the bank. Yeah, so, cash in the bank of 25 to 30 million.
Okay, so where is the sale of Pukekohe at?
So the council approved the private plan change. Then there's a process which is the appeal process, which gives people the right to have another chat about what we're doing. We've got a couple of appellants who are currently involved in this process, one of them being the local iwi. They were involved in the process to start with, but they've come back and said, well, we'd like to know a little bit more about the spiritual and cultural side of this, and that's not understandable. They're not objecting to what we're looking to do there, or the investors are looking to do there. So we're hopeful that that will go reasonably smoothly. The other person challenging this is actually an ATC club member, and this person, from what we can see, has nothing new to add to what she did when the first round of submissions went through to council. So yeah, we're hoping for a positive outcome, and we have a mediation period which is programmed up to sometime between now and July, and if we can get through that, then we can get on and settle the deal. Because at the moment, while it's not been settled, we've got an interest cost which is significant in the vicinity of 100 grand a week. So the sooner we can get this settled, the better all stakeholders will be. You know, not just the club, but we've got an obligation to set up a training complex of some sort. Where that is, what it looks like, we're still going through that. But it's difficult to go through anything until you're held up. And once we have certainty, then we can start taking a serious look at that.
And you're pretty confident that this will go through?
It seems to be. We have no reason to believe it won't. The purchasers have been in frequent contact with us. They were there recently, a couple of weeks ago, wanting to look at if they could have access to look at doing some drawings for drainage and what have you. So, those are the actions of a person that's still on the hook. Yep. So, and a good reason. I mean, this is a very, very significant development for the economy of Pukekohe and the investors. There's a lot involved here, and it would be odd to think they'd walk away with the opportunity.
Just back to Alexandra Park, is that the final parcel of land that will be sold?
There are other parcels that we own. Will something happen with those in the future? One would expect they would. If you're driving in the main gates at Alexandra Park, over to the left where the Hall of Fame was, there's a big block of land there. We've had interest from 2 different parties, both wanting to put a hotel there. So, you know, something will go there eventually. What it is, not sure, but, you know, this will help sustain the club, sustain stakes and racing at the Auckland Trotting Club in the future. So, you know, the board has to act in the best interests of the club, and that would be in the best interests of the club.
You mentioned the Hall of Fame there before. You've had some challenges around that, in particular the gravesite of the great Cardigan Bay.
Yes, well, I mean, look, the Hall of Fame, once it was set up, when it was originally set up, it was for good reasons. I mean, we had all this memorabilia, and there was memorabilia around New Zealand. It looked like a good site. But as times change, the use of land changes, and we'd had some discussions which hadn't gone particularly well. In the finish, we had to be a little bit heavy-handed and terminate the lease. We were hoping to redistribute the collections around the various rooms within the club, upstairs, downstairs, and that was going to come at some significant cost to the club because you've got to build secure showcases. But we were prepared to go through that, but we couldn't reach an agreement with the Hall of Fame. It kind of got a bit personal, I think, in the finish, and they decided that they would up and go somewhere else. And I was advised that they were going to Cambridge. A little bit disappointed with that. I rang Graham Bowen, the president at Cambridge, and I said, Graham, I understand that I've been told you're building a new building for the Hall of Fame. He said, don't believe everything you read in the media. I said, so what does that mean? He said, no, we're not building anything. What we're doing, we've offered storage of a 40-foot container in a paddock. So where is it at the moment? My understanding is it's sitting in a paddock waiting for someone to think about what's next.
So great to get that update from Jamie around the finances. While I was talking to him, I also asked him about the recently signed Entain deal. We were looking for some positivity, speaking of that, and along came Entain. It's got to be a great thing for the entire racing industry.
Absolutely. I haven't read all the detail yet, or I don't know if all the detail's out there, but it certainly is a major plus. Dean Shannon, who we know is going to have a major part in this, he's a harness racing man, and expectations are pretty decent. You know, we'd all be expecting a hike in stake money. Yeah, no, it's got to be good. And you know, I think the TAB were I mean, they've done their best, but as Kevin McElnulty said yesterday, they're under-resourced. They haven't had to employ the people they wanted to. They've had to allocate money to various other parts of the business. These people are professionals. They're going to come in there. I mean, Dean said to me that for one thing they'll do is they'll make sure that they'll have better betting options, so people will be more motivated to have a go, and they'll have better returns. Just the whole thing sounds like, wow, hallelujah, bring it on.
So big thank you to Jamie McKinnon. I also talked to him about dates and feature races and where they need to be, but they're in discussions with HRNZ at the moment, and I think that's important that that's allowed to be done away from the public eye, and they need to get that sorted amongst themselves. Michael, just on the finances of the Auckland Trotting Club, I think it was really important to get that information out and quash some of the theories out there that the ATC are in a worse position, although the sale of Pukekohe does need to go through.
Yeah, it does. Let's not sugarcoat it. This has been a gigantic stuff-up, and lots of people may be to blame for that. There's no point blaming them now. Some of them aren't around anymore. I think, you know, they were done pretty harshly by the development company they worked with originally, and that wasn't their fault. That's in the past now. I mean, we need to sell, because we're still part of the same industry, need to sell the Pukekohe track, because if they don't, Greg, they'll be insolvent. They can't carry $40, $50 million worth of debt forever. I mean, it doesn't take a genius to work out the interest rates being what they are, let alone business interest rates. The interest on that would be huge. So I don't want to see the Pukekohe track sold, but I also don't know $50 million worth of debt. So we have to sell it.
Yep.
That's it. And we can argue and yell, and people can go to meetings and yell again, but that ain't going to solve the problem unless they've got $50 million.
No.
So if that's what has to happen, that's what has to happen. And there's no point worrying about it in the past, because harness racing, for all its greatness, Greg, lives in the past way too much. Let's get it sorted. Let's try and find the money that they have to move on, and hopefully something better happens. And again, like I said last week with the Entain deal, Greg, once this happens, it's a really good chance to reignite the industry. Let's all go away for winter, which has its limitations, and think, how do I want my business to look? That's me as a broadcaster, you as the boss of this show, every horse trainer in the country, Greg. Let's not just wag our fingers at the Auckland Trotting Club for a mistake that was made 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, because we've all got things we need to improve on.
Yep, absolutely we have. All right, let's move on to the New Zealand Bloodstock weanling sale from last week, and I got a chance to get an update from their boss, if you like, of the standardbred side of things, Cam Bray. Cam, the NZB weanling sale just completed. What was the overall reaction and result?
Yeah, I think we're pretty happy with things under the circumstances. You know, things economically aren't probably quite as rosy as they were 12 months ago. We're off the back of a record sale. So when you look at the results and compare them to the 3 years, we're sort of looking more to the 2021 type numbers with an aggregate of just short of 1.2.
All right, clearance rate wise, I'm pretty sure since the sale you would have improved that.
Yeah, we finished selling at 91. I think I've sold half a dozen since, and we've still got a few more in the pipeline. So yeah, that'll climb all the while, and to be fair, always does the sale. 9 times out of 10 the sale does flush out more interest sometimes post-sale than it does actually during the auction.
What about the top lots? Not really a surprise that 2 fillies were on top?
Yeah, no, well, they had the pedigrees to die for, you know. Some of the more current pedigrees we've seen by good sires, and on type-wise, we're very, very good types. And I think you'll see that through the results, that you can actually make a good correlation between stallion, pedigree, and actually some good types made, probably what you would consider overs.
All right, so Woodlands had the top 2 lots, the Isabella filly, which is the family of Ahoka's Bondi and Dancing Diamonds, and of course, the Utmost Delight. She was a 2-time Group 1 winner by Down by the Seaside, so pretty sought after, weren't they? Yeah,
they were, and you know, we're very blessed with Scotty Witt and Tumby Park, who have been great supporters of the sale, generally buy at the better end of that. Probably this sale had, when you look at it, probably some very good pedigrees, very good types, which are genuine yearling sale horses, and they probably sold to that, you know, that market too.
All right, so Tumby with the top. Lincoln Farms, John Street, he got heavily involved with half a dozen purchases as well, and Peter Lagan on behalf of some clients in Australia. And great to see Montana Park involved at the weanling sale level before, which he has been.
He has been. He's actually had pretty good success out of the sale. So, you know, for a lot of guys, this sale now has become more of a, not a hedging of the bets, but it's a genuine sale. So if you're in the business of buying and you know, turning horses over, you've got to be buying in this market.
All right. Finally, Macca Lodge made their way north with numbers. How did their overall result, how happy were they?
I think talking to him, he might have been left, you know, at the close of sale just feeling a little bit flat. He probably didn't sell for overs. He cleared them all, 100% clearance. He tells me he covered costs. That excludes his entertainment costs, because I think you'll find he had himself a pretty bloody good time.
Yeah, exactly. Does that mean they'll learn a fair bit from that, and it's something that they'll do again, in your opinion?
Yeah, I think they will do it again. Just talking with them, they do realise that possibly a little bit to do with size is going to play a little bit of a part. And again, where they've come from, and geographically probably one of the cooler, later maturing parts of the world, he's gone completely against the grain and taken on the guys at the other end of the spectrum. So you've got to give him a lot of credit to Macca and the team. They did a great job. As I say, they really enjoyed themselves, and they met themselves. They've probably made lifetime friends out of the whole thing.
So here's the overall result from the New Zealand Bloodstock weanling sale. They sold over 100. In fact, it's gone past that now, and the clearance rate well into the 90s. And Michael, a couple of fillies that were really sought after. Not surprising, because pedigree-wise, they were very strong.
I thought it was a good sale. I don't think it's everybody's cup of tea, Greg, but a lot of the big buyers were there, like the Gene Feases and Tumby Propriety Limited were there, and John Street bought heavily. The one obvious one missing was Steve Stockman, but the barn's full. So I thought it's as good as it could have been, and if you take horses to those sales, you have to be aware that sometimes, because Greg, some of them look like little tiny animals. They look so small because they haven't developed yet. And that's really hard for people to pay big money for. So you can be aware that there's going to be some weakness in the market. But I thought it was pretty good, and I think it indicates the strength of the yearling market, Greg, that people are coming to this market because they feel it's hard to buy yearlings at value. That's a good indicator for the yearling market. So I thought all in all, everybody involved did a good job.
Yep, they certainly did. So that's a wrap up of the top lots headed by the Bettor's Delight filly out of Isabella. All right, time for us to get into some preview this week. Ashburton have a very big race day on Sunday. They have 3 feature races, so let's have a look at those, starting with the Sapling Stakes. And here's It's Tough's winning performance. Really good here, as was the second horse in the Avon City Forward Welcome Stakes. A Little Silence was his name, and he's come up with barrier 1 this week, Michael. Really good late. It's tough. It'll be interesting to see what happens off the gate. You've got a couple of first starters. Art Jordan's trialled really nicely. And of course Bronson, who finished just in behind the first 2 in this race, gets into it from barrier 7 this week.
Yeah, I think Bronson's too short in the early market. I think obviously he's an all-stars horse. And by the way, congratulations to Nathan Purdon for winning an Auckland Cup last week. But I think if these horses were in different barns, the market would be totally different. I think the horse who wins here, It's Tough, was really good. I really enjoyed talking to Katie Cox about him. No reason he can't win again, because a hard mile at Ashburton can be a really good staying race. But also thought the second horse was excellent. So I'm actually looking forward to this race. I didn't even know it was on. It sort of just snuck up on me, Greg, and now it's here. And it will give me a little buzz on Sunday afternoon. So yeah, I would like to see one of the minor stables win it again.
Yep, well that race has been a run for over 100 years, so it is one of our longest standing juvenile races. So 320 I'm Tough, 250 Bronson, who is the favourite, A Little Silence at $5, and Art Jordan on debut at around $6. Looking forward to that one. Let's have a look at the Helen Pope. A bit shorter price favourite in this. Rak Lou has been super since coming north. Peter Hunter's done a fantastic job with her. She comes up with barrier 7. She's $1.75. She beats race rivals RDB Mickey here and Sophia Rose. So the form's well exposed, Michael, and she's very talented.
Yeah, she is. Really good in the south. Seems to have matured since coming up to Canterbury to stay with Megan Swain. And I hope she wins. Pete Hunter's a super guy, Greg. I first met Pete in 1991 when he was helping to look after DU2, the American horse for Calvin Harrison at the Inter-Dominions. That means, Greg, that both Pete and I are getting older, so I hope he wins a big race.
Absolutely, and he's got a great chance with her. In fact, I'm pretty sure she wouldn't have been out of place against the boys. So she's $1.75. Follow Your Dream for Robert Dunn at $5.50 is on debut. $7 RDB Mickey, who's done very little wrong. And Waterfront, first starter for Mark and Nathan Purdon, also in the market at $4.50. Let's go to the Champion Stakes, and Franco Sinatra, way too good on this occasion for the Dalgettis. Has now won 3 of 5, come up $1.85 favourite, but I don't think it's just a line-up and win job, Michael, because Hoka LeBron's there from the same barn. Commander Ben's been doing some really good things, and last year's Sapling Stakes winner Vinca B's in there too.
Yeah, I like this one. I think he's a horse who wins the races he should win. In this grade, away from the best horses, I think he's really good. And then he'll have the option to take the step to become a Derby horse later in the season, Greg. But I wasn't surprised by what I saw last week, but I was surprised by the ease of what I saw last week. He just smashed them.
Yep, absolutely did. And the race last year won by Republican Party. We know the sort of talent. He ended up running second, of course, in the Derby behind now the Auckland Cup winner in Akuta. Let's go to Addington Raceway Thursday night. Here's a trial from down south of Smokin' Bandar. There's a few interesting parts of this, Michael. Clearly was way too good in this trial, and really good fresh up record. Spoke to Craig Ferguson, said he's absolutely flying, so much so post this he'll be up to Auckland and then on his way to the Constellations Carnival. So why a couple whilst a couple are falling by the wayside in that carnival, Smokin' Bandar goes there. He'll have a bit of a cult following, won't he, with his grey colour, but he's a pretty damn good horse too.
Yeah, he is. I mean, he beat the best trotters back in the spring, so exciting times for them. And he seems relatively well mannered, so they're not great trotting races up in Queensland, the great stakes. Majestic Harry will be there for our friend Brittany Graham, but I'm not sure there'll be too many superstars there, so looking forward to seeing him over there. It's going to give us plenty of interest. Manhattan's going Greg, there'll be a handful there, including yourself. Yeah, it's a bit disappointing that we're not going to see Copy That and Merlin, because Merlin, by the way, we forgot to mention earlier, has been sidelined and he's gone out for the winter. So yes, it'd be good to have them there, but as much as it sounds great, Greg, if you go there, gee, it's a long way home. See, we haven't seen Smoke and Bandar for ages, but all those other horses have been racing, as we've seen today, and you've got to give them a break at some stage. So happy he's going, because it's going to be one of the highlights of the winter, Greg. I'm sure many of us will be looking on from this side of the Tasman, wishing we were there.
Yeah, well, he had his last start, of course, in that epic Renwick Farms Dominion, but he looked in great fettle at the trials. Let's go to Cambridge on Friday night, Michael, and Crusader. This is a standing start, which will make it a bit more of a challenge. Hooray Henry, who he beats here, gets into this race a lot better, 15 metres ahead of Crusader, but just done a good job, Crusader, and loves racing at Cambridge. 4 of his 5 wins coming at that venue.
He's like a little mini Kango, and by mini I don't mean size, because he's quite a big lump of a horse, but like a bit one-paced and likes to keep rolling, and that's really advantageous, you know, this time of the year, because the fields start to drop away. I think this is a really tricky race. There's a horse racing in the North Island, Greg, at the moment, who is absolutely certain to win a race in the next 6 weeks, and that's Simply Sam. I'm not sure it's going to be at Cambridge this Friday, but he is going to win a race shortly. So it's our last show. If I can leave punters with one parting gift, keep backing Simply Sam, maybe this Friday. He's going to win a race shortly.
All right, that's good information to have. We're about to take a short break here on your box seat. On the other side, we'll cross the Tasman. We'll find out how much money we're giving to breast cancer and wrap up this series of your box seat. And we're across the Tasman with Garrards. Here's Artillery. Charges late here and grabs about time. Also in this race, Firefox was 4th and Better Zip It returned. That's him right on the outside, Michael. I suppose slightly disappointing in 9th, but he was first up since winning the Nullarbor.
Yeah, the big shock here was Bondi Lockdown, who's in the middle of the pack. So Artillery's trained by Belinda McCarthy. They also had Bondi Lockdown in the race, and he disappointed, spoke to Luke, absolutely no reason why. He said, if you'd told us 3 months ago Artillery would beat Bondi Lockdown, we wouldn't have believed you. But as if they went back at the start, they're getting ready for Queensland, no big grief there. He just never put into the race. So, yeah, they went 150.4, and those horses back in the field underperformed, but it did open the playing field for races like the Blacks of Fake, which with the McCarthys going, with Grimson going, with the Victorians going, and of course Leap to Fame waiting for them there, Greg. It's going to be a bloody good race.
Yeah, absolutely it is, and Leap to Fame makes his way to Albion Park. Speaking of that, let's have a look at Big Wheels. This horse has done a really good job. Chantel Turpin, winner of 18 races, won a couple of those triad finals, actually went round in Ladies and Reds Rising Sun last year. Out of this race, many of them going to Albion Park this week for the Flashing Red, Michael. Leap to Fame isn't, it's in the race following that, but Big Wheels, Black Sedan, Turn It Up, they're all in it. So, yeah, I suppose this is some sort of guide to the locals that are heading to the carnival. Also, Hot to Trot will be at Menangle this week. La Rosa raced last night and was unplaced, which was slightly disappointing. And at Melton this week in the Lazarus free-for-all, Better Isolates in there. Also, Bollinger is first up in Australia in race 6, and Queen Elida races Ultimate Stride in the 4th there. So there's plenty to look forward to across the Tasman. Let's go further afield and go to the Elite Lop. Here is the Australasian runner, Just Believe, unfortunately going into a break. Former winner of the Elite Lop, Etanet, actually won this heat and did it in nice style. That's it, finding the front now. It's by Tomoko. Tomoko, a 2-time winner of the Elite Lop, and as we're going to see shortly, the winner of this year's Elite Lop, also by Tomoko. Here was Heat 2, and San Montour taking this out. Michael, you've been here, you know what it's like to experience the Elite Lop, and when you see it, and all the vision and the crowds and them running to find their spots. It's quite an amazing occasion.
Yeah, it's enormously good fun. The standard of horses is incredibly high. You don't get many of the best American horses. I'll talk about that in a second. Here's Honeck, who won the final, and as so often happens, because after all, it's still a mile race on a 1,000-metre track, the leaders get home. So, really good performance, as you mentioned, by Tomoko, who won 2 Elite Loppets, as they call it, the elite race. It's a very special race. I think it's also easy for people to get carried away and think that harness racing in Sweden is like some nirvana. They have a massive carnival here, but like everywhere in the world, most average harness meetings don't have a lot of people there. So this is more of a New Zealand Cup week thing. It's one of those things where people are used to going, they gravitate towards it. Probably the difference between the New Zealand Cup and the Elite Lop is the appreciation for the horse and the drivers, whereas for maybe 3/4 of the people in New Zealand Cup, that's a social event, and that's cool too. So, very different type of race meeting. On Just Believe, I thought he was really good. Missed the 1-1 early, wasn't his fault, nothing they could do. Bit harder in those wider carts. Greg drove him well afterwards, went to poke through a gap, touched a wheel, had a gallop. Still was really good. He at least proved he can be competitive. He has 2 more races in Sweden, so he'll miss the Oslo Grand Prix because that really changes your ability to get back home. The quarantine becomes a lot longer. He'll head to northern Sweden for a race there on Saturday week, and then he'll more than likely hang around for another race. So to Jess and Greg, a wonderful occasion, and to be honest, they probably knew heading there maybe they wouldn't make the final, but pretty cool bucket list trip for many people, Greg, the Elite Loppet, and Just Believe, considering where he was 16 months ago, 18 months ago, he's had a hell of a time. Probably the greatest story in harness racing right at the moment.
Yeah, exactly. And of course, Dexter did drive in the series and was 7th in the final, so a bit of Kiwi interest there. Racing this week, Addington Raceway on Thursday night. They're getting pretty close to that every week, twice a week racing, with their Sundays about to kick in. Their first 5:06 on Thursday. Cambridge on Friday night, 5:18 with their 10 races. The big day at Ashburton on Sunday. They kick off at 12:23 and we race at Invercargill at Ascot Park on on Monday as well. With hand milking, we've been trying to raise some money for the Breast Cancer Foundation over the last 30 odd weeks. We've been able to do such a thing, and I got to catch up with Nikki Sinclair Perkins. She's the head of fundraising for the Breast Cancer Foundation, to tell her how much we had. Well, Nikki, it's so nice to see you on camera, because I've got some good news for your organisation around a donation we're about to make.
Kia ora, Greg. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, no problem at all. Now, as you know, at the start of the last series of the box seat, we came up with the idea about raising some funds to put towards the Breast Cancer Foundation. And as a result of some investing that we did throughout the 30 odd weeks, we've raised just over $5,300.
That's incredible. Thank you so much. That's so cool. Thank you, Greg.
Well, on behalf of Graham Hand and the hand milking operation that he runs and the box seat, we thought it was a worthy thing to do, and obviously it's a great cause. So I'm sure that you and the organisation will be able to put that money to good use.
Yeah, thank you so much. Breast Cancer Foundation doesn't receive any government funding, so we can only keep going because of things like this. So thank you so much. Makes a huge difference. Yeah, and you had a big week last week trying to raise some funds. Now you've had a big week this week because we're giving you some funds. So please put it towards all of those things that you guys do in such a great way. So thanks for giving us the opportunity to be able to be part of that. Thank you so much, Greg. Thank you.
Yeah, the pink ribbon fundraising last week, $5,300, Michael. That's what we dropped into the account yesterday. You know, every year, 3,300 New Zealanders get diagnosed with breast cancer, so we're really pleased to be able to make our contribution anyway. Yeah, and so we should. Racing is part of society, and we need to help other people in society. We didn't help them enough. We had a target of 10,000, so we failed, Greg. So we'll do better next season. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to do better next season. We're going to get the 10,000, maybe less multis and more straight out bets, because some weeks I let you down and vice versa. So Breast Cancer Society people, thank you for everything you do for so many people in this country. Greg and I will try harder next season. Yeah, absolutely, we will. Michael, we're not going to have a favourite race over the series, but what would you like to see happen over the winter and leading into, hopefully, another series of the box seat?
if I could fix one thing in harness racing, I want to see, and I have very rarely spoken about this incident on air, I want to see a resolution one way or the other to this Operation Inca thing. I'm not going to get into the logistics of it and the details, but it's been going on for way too long and affecting people's lives. And we live in an era of mental health issues and affecting people's mental health. And I'm not going to give a big, I know better than the police. They have their right to make investigations into what they want to do. And I realise the court system's very bogged down. But 5 years? Really? This rubbish, some of it's so wrong and so much media coverage, but we're not hearing about the things, the charges that do get dropped because they're sub judice and they affect the other charges. If the police drop this, Greg, I want the Racing Integrity Board to drop it too. If it's not good enough for the police, it shouldn't be good enough for the Racing Integrity Board. By the time we come back in September or October, whenever we come back, I want this shadow taken off the industry, Greg, because it's been too long and we've now got to the pointy end of it, which is incredibly minor. And it's been incredibly damaging for an industry and for lots of people's lives.
Yep, it sure has. I'd just like to see the industry get right behind Entain and the positive news that we've just received. So that means clubs, all the administrators, breeders, owners, punters to a lesser extent, and support Harness Racing New Zealand, and let's all get in the same train and go in the same direction, because infighting's not helping anybody. Michael, to you, to our producer Glenn Bourne, to all of the team from the TAB who have helped us throughout the year, Wilsner, Brittany, Shay, Daryl, everyone who's been involved, Patrick from the TAB as well, who's done a huge job for us. We can't possibly do it on our own. To Emily and the team from HRNZ who've done so much of the filming for us, the Magnus team too. It's your show. It's about telling the stories of our great game, and I think we're just lucky to be able to deliver it on a weekly basis.
Well, Greg, you put the show together. The show disappeared during COVID and it's back, and you run it. So thank you for doing that for the industry. We've spoken to Dean Shannon from Entain, and he said, hey, I want the show. He loves harness racing. He wants the show back next season, so hopefully we can be on even more platforms. If you watched any part of the show from Australia, from New Zealand, from further afield, thanks for taking the time to join us over the last season.
All right, and for Michael and I, it's bye-bye for now. The Box Seat brought to you by our stable of sponsors. Harness Link for your worldwide harness coverage. New Zealand Bloodstock Standardbred, where winning begins. Brecon Farms. Stonewall Stud. IRT, it's your horse and our passion. Australasian-wide Garrard's Horse and Hound. Renwick Farms. Lincoln Farms. Harness Racing New Zealand. And the clubs Addington, Ashburton, Alexandra Park and Cambridge.